Today we're going to catch up on a little history, Vaishnava history, because we've had different appearance days and special days, and we should know the background and like that. So today we're going to talk about, just briefly, about the appearance of Sita Devi, because it's quite mystical how she appeared. Sita Devi, Sita Ram. And then from the Padma Purana about how Ekadasi manifest, what was Ekadasi a reaction to, and along with that comes a ghost story I personally heard Prabhupada tell about Ekadasi, the value of Ekadasi. And it involves a Muslim, and Ekadasi, and a ghost. So it's from Prabhupada, so it's a nice story. And then we're going to read about Shankaracharya, and then we're going to read about Madhavacharya, but there's some history, and I think you'll find it worthwhile. Okay, now I was thinking, Ram, you could play mridanga in absence of a mridanga player. I know, but I know what I'm doing. There's only a few rare souls that can follow me in the key of Z. Jayararo Madhava Kunda Bihari Jayararo Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopijanna Balava Irivanadari Gopijanna Balava Irivanadari Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanatari Jamuna Tira Vanatari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopijana Balava Irivanadari What? Sodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanatari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopi Janna Balava Divanandani Gopi Janna Balava Yamuna Nandana Vrajjanarandana Jasodanandana Vrajjanarandana Jamuna Tiravanatari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari Goprimanandi. Thank you, Mukunda. We had a rough night over there at the place where I stay, my apartment. It's called Diamond Apartments. Trust me, it's diamond in the rough. Well, then it has some good fortune to it. But they were, my new neighbors were carousing all night long. Yeah, and their front doors and windows are literally 4 feet from where I sleep. So I am not by nature very tolerant, in case you've noticed. And Krishna's put me in a situation where I have to learn to become tolerant. Until I find a similarly inexpensive place to move to that's close to the temple. So, Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Nirvasesha Sunyavari Paskachada Sadharani. So we will begin with the appearance of Sita Devi. And this comes from the Ramayana, the original Valmiki Ramayana. So I've just took some notes here. So there were a husband and wife performing great austerities, and they wanted to have Lakshmi Devi as their daughter. And a beautiful daughter appeared named Vedavati. That's what they named her. She wanted only Vishnu as her husband. She's Lakshmi. She wanted only, Lakshmi Narayan. Living as an ascetic in the forest, Ravana saw her, and we know Ravana's nature. And so he asked her to marry him. She refused. He said, what? What is it that which is worthy for the lion should be taken by the crow? I think that's what Sita says to Ravana. So anyway, of course, what did Ravana do? He's not one who's used to hearing no. So immediately Ravana grabbed her. She jumped into fire and she gave up her body. So, cursing Ravana, in my next birth, Lord Vishnu will come as my husband and kill you. Prabhupada says, what to speak of the goddess of fortune, but accursed by a chaste lady, Gandhari. There's many examples in the Bhagavatam. Kunti Draupadi, you don't mess with a chaste lady. You don't mess with anybody, but especially a chaste lady. So, she cursed him. In my next birth, Lord Vishnu will become my husband and kill you. And what form did Lord Vishnu come as? He came as Lord Ram. So there's more to the story, don't worry. Ravana was feeling very sorry to lose such a beautiful woman. He wasn't, whatever, you get the picture. He took her ashes and put them in a gold and jeweled box and kept them in a solitary place in Lanka. He would visit them daily, but inauspicious signs began to appear in Lanka. Thunder with no clouds, lightning, braying of jackals and donkeys. I mean, there's different, inauspicious things. Whoa, what's going on here? Of course, we live in Kali Yuga, so it's awash with inauspicious signs. Inauspicious. Narada Muni visited. Narada Muni, he has that amongst his many roles. He plays a role as a transcendental catalyst to move the Lord's pastimes along or to set things up. He's a transcendental choreographer of the dramatic leelas of the Lord. Like when he appeared to Kamsa, said, wait a minute, I saw Prabhupada do this, because Kamsa was thinking, okay, the 8th son of Vasudeva is predicted to kill me. Okay, fine, I'll kill the 8th son as soon as he's born. No worries. But Narada Muni appeared, and I saw Prabhupada personally do this. He said, this Vishnu is very sneaky. He comes as, Lord Boar, and he comes as, so many different things. You can't count on him to keep his word. So Prabhupada went like this. He said, 8th son, but Narada went like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, you're thinking this is 8. But what if you count here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the first can become the 8th. What if you start in the middle? 1, 2. And in this way, he made the case, Narada Muni made the case that you can't trust Lord Vishnu and any one of the sons could, So this way it speeded up the appearance of the Lord. So Narada Muni, that's one of the roles he plays as a servant of the Lord to expedite his pastimes. So Narada, appeared and said, you've got all these inauspicious signs happening. It's because you've got the ashes of this chaste lady who, threw herself into the fire. You got to get rid of these ashes. You got to get rid of them. So he told Ravana he should remove the box without opening it to somewhere outside Lanka. Ravana deposited the golden jeweled box in the sea. It was eventually taken by the tides, by the waves, to India, Bharat, because, it's off the distance there. Robbers found it, hid it in the forest for safekeeping. Yeah, hey, way to go. We've struck it rich here. When they came back to get the golden box, they could not remove it. Rather, they could not even lift it. In frustration, they left. Eventually, that spot became a river, then a dry basin near the city of Matila. It was that spot that was selected, because remember I said the other day that when they would do a yajna, they'd plow the field and make everything level, and there's a whole process for doing it. Geometry, this is a sidetrack, we got a lot of ground to cover, but geometry actually, and they accept it. Algebra and all that came from the Arabs, so they say. Ultimately, it came from all geometry and algebra came from the Vedic literature, and you can still find remnants of it. And it was also that, they could figure out how to lay out temples, how to lay out yagas, and the right, astrological calculation. That all comes from the Vedas. And the geometry all comes from how to, Vastu Silpa, was it? Yeah, Vastu Silpa Shastra. How you design buildings accordingly and all that. So that all comes from, the math to support that all comes from the Vedic literatures. So how did we get off on that? Eventually that spot became a river, then a dry basin near the city of Matila, which of course was the capital city of Janak, the father of, who was childless. Remember, he wanted a child, but so he cleared the field in the. Where was I? When the place was plowed in preparing the site for the jaga, they found the box. This time it could be opened, and inside was a beautiful baby Sita. So that's how Sita Devi appeared. Now she's got a couple other pastimes of how she appears, but that's enough. That gives you a taste. Janaka was her father. Janaki Janaka Janaram. Janaki Ram. No, he's plowing the field. He's the king. The king plows, with his agents and everything. They hit the box. They open up the box. they're performing the jugga for a baby girl, and inside the box is stunningly gorgeous baby Sita. Wish fulfilled. I mean, it wasn't by chance he was out there in that field and tripped, stubbed his toe. Oh, what's this? Okay. So now, and maybe we'll just start by telling Prabhupada's ghost story. Well, I guess I'll start with this. Jamani Rishi asked his guru Vyasadeva, what's the history? What's the background? Just like in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks, what is it? Tadviti pranipatena paripashenya sevaya? That it's not that inquiries are not valid. One has to ask in the right mood, and you have to ask from the right person. A blind man leading the blind, both fall into the ditch. But we're not just supposed to do things. Well, there's that whole section when Nanda Maharaj is performing the Jagga for Indra before the Govardhan Puja Leela, and Krishna, little sweet Krishna asks, well, why are we doing it? Well, what about this? And, what about what isn't the rain coming automatically? And finally Nanda Maharaj says, oh, just what do you want? We'll just do whatever you want, however you tell us to do it, we'll do it. So, but Prabhupada makes the point, and also it's in the Bhagavatam, that we should not do things blindly. We should understand what we're doing, Action performed in knowledge is more powerful than action performed in ignorance. Although even in ignorance, a child touches fire, he'll be burnt. But better to know what's going on. Okay, so Jamani Rishi asked his guru, Vyasadeva, what is the story, what is the background of Ekadasi? So here we go. Don't let me forget the ghost story. Lord Narayan, of course, every manifestation, he exhales, creates all the universes, then populates it with all the living entities. So what happens? Along with the means to, because why is the material world created? The famous answer, God made this world for us to enjoy. Well, if God made this world for us to enjoy, what is the next logical question? Yeah, this is the best he could do. Birth, death, disease, old age, come on, So, coronavirus, yeah, it's a subset of disease. So, the purpose of this material world is it's reformatory. It's Prabhupada's classic example. It's a schoolhouse, jailhouse. It's a hospital. Nobody wants to stay in jail. It's meant for reform, to learn your lesson. Nobody's supposed to stay in school. You're supposed to graduate and go out into the so-called real world. Nobody's supposed to stay in a hospital. That's not the success. Cable TV and nice pretty nurses and order off the menu. No, get out. So, in order to teach the living entities, there's suffering, there's struggle, there's so many. What is it? Is it Durga or Shiva's there with a prong, threefold prong? Durga, poking. Adidaivik, Adiatmik, Adibautik, the three types of suffering, other living entity, three modes of material nature. There's so many examples, those three, that tripod, which is pushing the living entity through this material world to reformation so we can leave this place and go back to Godhead. So it's all benign. But along with the means to reform them by necessary punishment, he created Papa Purusha. Just like it says, sin personified, the form of sin. Now, just to give you an idea of what Papa Purusha, this form of sin personified. His head was made of the sin of killing a Brahmin. His two eyes, drinking intoxicants. Mouth made from the sin of stealing gold. Ears, illicit connection with the spiritual master's wife. Nose, killing one's wife. Arms from killing a cow. Chest from abortion. Abdomen, sex with another's wife. Navel, killing those who are dependent on us. Waist is egotistical self-appraisal. Genitals, selling one's own daughter. Buttocks, what can I say? Here it is. Telling confidential matters, like gossiping, revealing secrets, sniping behind people's back. There it is. Feet, killing one's father. Hair, all types of lesser sins. Because there's so many hairs. Just like in Catholicism, there's cardinal sins and venal sins. Cardinal sins are the big ones that send you straight to hell. And then venal sins, they have an aggregate total. They're smaller category. Okay. So embodying all sinful acts and vices, yellow eyes elicit extreme misery from the sinful persons. They call it the evil eye. So just imagine this horrible form with nasty yellow eyes raging through the world, torturing the living entities, and they just want to get out. So, one day, he visited Lord Yamaraj. Lord Narayan visited Yamaraj. And when he visited Yamaraj, he heard the wailing and gnashing and crying of the living entities. And he said, what is this? I know Krishna knows everything, but these are his leelas. So what is this? Yamaraj explained, these are the living entities being crushed by the material nature under the agency of Papa Purush. And Lord Narayan felt so sorry hearing the sound of the suffering living entities. From his compassion, Ekadasi is the embodiment of Lord Narayan's compassion for the suffering living entities. And Lord Narayan said, anyone who observes Ekadasi, you just observe Ekadasi on this day, liberated, guaranteed. It's like a restart. You get a human form. You don't go back to Godhead automatically, but you get a human form of life, devotee family, pious. It's like a clean slate. Okay, here you go. Just don't blow it, and you're going to be okay. It's a reset. I was going to say, and not to pick on anybody, and there's, what was it? Let me start off by offending the strict Dharmic Hindus. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described that, who was it? Who was told that the only way they could be the shadow of a Muslim was, or water from a Muslim's drinking pot was spilled on them. The Hindus said the only way you can purify it is drinking boiling ghee. Who was that? It was there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And history will tell you, Prabhupada says it, and I also heard it from a history professor. His field was Indology, that one of the reasons that many of the people in India became Muslim, there was forced conversions and a cheaper tax rate and all kinds of stuff, but it was also that the caste system was so onerous, and people were exploited, and the Brahmins were taking advantage. People said, forget this. I'll become a Christian, I'll become a Muslim, and I don't have to follow all this stuff. So the misapplication of a brutal misunderstanding. Krishna never says by birth. Krishna says what? What is it? I'll get it. Chaturvana maya sristam guna karma. Whoop, I said it. So these four orders, what are they determined by? Other than Dravida? Guna and karma, which means qualities and work. Krishna never says janma. Janma's a good start, sure. If you're born in a family of musicians or doctors, you have a good chance that you'll become a musician or a doctor. But you don't automatically, just because you're born in a family, know how to play violin. It doesn't work that way. Okay, so I don't want to go too far afield. So Lord Narayan creates, out of his compassion, Ekadasi. But then what happened? Papa Purush, everyone's zip, 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 going back to Godhead, being liberated. He's got no job. He's got no seva. He's got no service. He's got no, was it Kali? Said, when Parikshit Maharaj came to him and he said, well, where am I going to hide in your kingdom? He said, Parikshit Maharaj said, you can stay wherever there's sin. He said, but you're such a good ruler. Where am I going to go? He says, no one's, He said, okay, you can stay where gold is accumulated, stocked, unjustly stocked, because sin will come there. So in the same way, Papa Purush had nowhere to hide. So where did Lord Vishnu, making a place, a little wiggle room for Papa Purush, where will you find Papa Purush? Sin personified, other than Dravida, sin personified, anyone know where you will find? In grains on Ekadasi. So that's why we don't eat grains on Ekadasi. Ekadasi is, Prabhupada said, we used to think, 1970, Brahmacharya ashram, bhaktas in Los Angeles, and devotees around the world, we thought that Ekadasi was something inauspicious. And therefore we had to chant extra rounds and fast to counteract it. So I think it was Vishnujan Swami, I'm not sure who, asked Prabhupada, Probably, like so many things, we had it backwards. So I said, no. Ekadasi is so auspicious. Therefore, we chant extra rounds because there's great benefit for it. That because we increase our hearing and chanting about Lord Vishnu. So Ekadasi is most auspicious, but there's a little, you got to be careful. You don't eat grains. Okay, and Prabhupada's ghost story, and then I'm going to skip the rest of this. Subhuti Roy. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I left out that detail. Boiling. Well, I said boiling giza. All right. But Prabhupada's ghost story. I personally heard Prabhupada tell this, 1970, Los Angeles. I am not going to give it a purport. It is just one of those far-out things that Prabhupada said. I fully accept it. Prabhupada had a Muslim friend. And in those days, I don't want to go off in the history, but, it was very common. Villagers who living together, and they'd be friendly, and, they'd invite us for their, Eid, party sometimes, and then, whatever, and he'd cook some, vegetarian something, and they would come and observe Janmashtami. Everyone loves Janmashtami. So there was, people getting along quite peacefully. So Prabhupada had a Muslim friend. This is Prabhupada in his business days. I don't know the year, but Prabhupada is a businessman. When he had his pharmacy shop, and I think it is. I don't know for sure. I don't know if it's when he had his pharmacy shop or when he was doing. He was the chief sales rep for Bengal Chemical. I don't know what was going on, but it was Prabhupada's household days, and he had a Muslim friend, and he invited his Muslim friend that you come for lunch. They would, So they set up the date. But the thing is that anyone who even when I first went to India in 1973, if you wanted to call from Vrindavan internationally, you had to go to Delhi and book a call. Remember that? Everybody's queued up, and everybody's shouting, and you got the wrong line. It was a lot of fun, but it took a lot of effort. So in the same way, you could probably was living in Allahabad, Prayag. You couldn't just pick up the phone and call his friend, and you didn't text him that, oh, hey, listen. So what to do? Because that day turned out to be Ekadasi, and Prabhupada on Ekadasi didn't cook grains and he didn't serve grains. So what to do? So when his Muslim friend showed up, Prabhupada said, look, I'm really sorry, we can make nice veg, we can make other preparations, but, there won't be any rice, there won't be any chapati or puri, because, we don't cook grains on Ekadasi. His Muslim friend was hugely relieved. He said, oh, thank heaven, I also observe Ekadasi. So Prabhupada said to his Muslim friend, okay, why, it's a natural question, why do you observe Ekadasi? The Muslim friend said, I was walking through the forest one day, and off the path of the forest, in the forest, I heard some people laughing. There was some party going on. So, naturally curious, I went off the path. Although it wasn't too far, I could hear. So I went to see what was going on, and there were some ghosts having a party. So it's Prabhupada's story. So I said, so the Muslim man said, why are you so happy? And they said, tomorrow, this rich man will ride into the town on his horse. His horse will stumble. He'll crack his head on the cobblestone, on the stone path on the road, crack his head and die, and he'll have to become a ghost like us. Ha, 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 ha. So the Muslim man, being a kind-hearted person, thought, well, let me go into the marketplace, meet the man beforehand, and, warn him, so he doesn't. So he was there waiting. Sure enough, the man came on the horse, and before he had a chance to warn him, the horse stumbled, tripped, the man cracked his head and died. The next morning, following morning, our Muslim friend was again going through the forest, but this time he didn't hear laughing, he heard crying. So he went, sure enough, the ghosts were there all lamenting. And he said, what happened? It happened just like you said. He came on the horse, fell off, the horse stumbled, cracked it, and died. He said, the ghost said, he had a fight with his wife that morning, and he hadn't eaten his breakfast, and he hadn't had lunch yet. So he had not eaten grains on Ekadasi when he left his body. So he became saved from becoming a ghost, and now he's born in a nice Brahmin devotee family. So the Muslim man said, ever since then, I observe Ekadasi. So that's a little sample from Prabhupada of the power of Ekadasi. And I heard it personally, so there it is. The next, what is it they say? The arc of history is long, but bends towards justice. I think it's Martin Luther King. But the arc of history is long. If you take something and you bend it too fast, even bamboo, it'll snap. But you bend it over time, it will, you can bend it, if you do it in steps or gradually or whatever it is. So Krishna is the controlling the movements of all living entities. What is it we just said the other day? Like I say, these people drove me nuts last night. Paritanaya sadhanam vinasaya chadruskatam dharmasam stapanartaya sambhavame yuge yuge. So to establish dharma, Krishna appears. He never gives up. We give up. Love, it's whatever. We may not get through everything today. But there's that book, what is it, 1984? Is that what it's called? It was that, dystopic, prediction of the future. And the way love every love, one of the themes of the book is that every love has a breaking point. I'll spare you the story. And even if you have so-called, Romeo and Juliet, it's got to end at the time of death, by mistake or the due facts of time. We all have to separate. What is it? The Bhagavatam gives the example. Seaweed comes together and the current changes, and again, or sticks on a river or a stream come together and then they separate. We're not diminishing the value of husband and wife or family. You don't go on a trip, but it's temporary. It ultimately has to separate. Well, how did I get off on that? But Krishna never leaves. Suhridam sarvabhutanam, that he's the best of friends, whether we're in a pig body, or we're a worm, or we're a malecha eating cows. Still, Krishna, everybody else gives up. They say, that's enough. I'm done with you, What do they call it? Tough love. The kid's a drunkard, and, or a drug addict, and steal. Finally, you got to change the locks. Enough. I'm done. But Krishna never gives up on the living entity. As the super soul, Katha Upanishad, two birds in the tree, the Jiva and the Paramatma, he never gives up. So that's localized in the same way Krishna's guiding history for the purpose. So people had all become Buddhist, especially under Ashoka. Ashoka, who was a king, he was a good king actually, but Ashoka became a Buddhist, and then naturally people followed the king, Shrestha, they followed the leader, and it was spread all over India. So Sankaracharya, maybe I'll just do a summary. Here's a picture of Sankaracharya. You can pass this around. So Sankaracharya comes. Anyone know who Sankaracharya actually is? Anyone other than Dravida? He's Lord Shiva. And he explains, because of the time factor, I'm going to skip ahead. He explains that it's his Leela. Sankaracharya is Lord Shiva, come for the purpose of bewildering the living entities with impersonal philosophy. Buddhism, which people were following, is just voidism. Buddhism is just if a Buddhist merges into the Vairagya river, the last covering of the universe, they actually merge Vairagya. Yeah. Anyway, it's got different names. They merge into the ultimate, just the Mahatattva. There's no but Sankaracharya says, even though it's not a complete understanding, that there's matter and there's spirit. So instead of just everything being matter, and then ultimately when there's no desire, propelling you forward. If you ever meet a Buddhist, ask him this question, because the basic principle of Buddhism is to become desireless. If you become desireless, then there is no desire propelling the Atma forward. We are all individuals because we all have individual desires and we have individual karma. And therefore we're propelling ourselves through this material nature. If we become free from any desire, then there's no more desire for our karma, there's no more activity, and there's nothing to propel us into another body, and poof, we pop like a bubble and become one with it's spiritual suicide. We become nothing. We become nothing. Dust to dust, ashes to ashes. So if you ever meet a Buddhist, ask him this question. It's always a lot of fun to watch the gears fry. Anyone know a question you can ask them? Of course, you can ask them, are you vegetarian? And Buddha taught ahimsa, but this one they can't really get out of. Isn't the desire to become desireless a self-centered desire? It's like, what's the sound of one hand clapping? If you've got a desire to become desireless, it means you want to become free from suffering. Bingo, you got a desire. So the whole philosophy is just hodgepodge. But to at least get people on the path of the Vedas, and the two things, to get them to accept the Vedas, because Buddha, they were using Buddhism as a rationale, as they were using the Vedas and animal sacrifice described in the Vedas as a rationale for eating meat, killing animals. Buddha said, you can't kill animals, it's horrible. They said, hey, it's right here in the Vedas. So then Buddha said, well, then don't follow the Vedas, you follow me. And they all wanted to be atheists. So he said, fine, be atheist, just follow me. Of course, he was God personified. So, he's so many ways Sankaracharya came. He's Lord Shiva come to trick the living entities into at least, again, falling within the Vedic parameters, following Shastra. You've got to follow the Vedas. Now, their conclusion of the Vedas was impersonal. But at least it's not just merged. There's something Brahman, there's something eternal, there's material, and there's spiritual. So there's something beyond. It gets them to understand that. And it also gets them that we've got to follow the Vedas. So that's, I think we'll end there, and because we want to say something about Madhavacharya. But all of this you can find in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's very nicely explained in the, when Lord Chaitanya okay, there it is. But one last thing, anyone know, and anyway, I don't want to go too far afield, but just on his disappearance day, on his disappearance bed, and it said that the last instructions take precedent over the earlier discussions, just as the disappearance day is more important than the appearance day, at least with our Acharyas, because that's when they've completed their teachings and their Leela and their pastime. So what were the last instructions of Sankaracharya to all his impersonal friends, all huddled, yes, Rami, I'm going to call on you, all huddled around thinking that, I found my home and Om and it's all one. What did Sankaracharya say? Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda. And Bhaja has deep meaning. It doesn't mean just puja. As who was saying? You were saying yesterday. Very nice point. That worship is one thing. You can do your formulaic puja, and fine, great. We're not criticizing that. But bhajan, that's devotion. That's activity. That's selfless activity in love. So he's saying, worship, serve Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, and then would just make sure they get it through their thick head. What word does he add? Mudamate. So his last words, it's recorded. The last words of Sankaracharya is Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Mudamate. So even though he's Lord Shiva come to cheat the living entities, he nailed it down at the end, Okay, you guys, this is the last thing. So that's Sankaracharya. And you can look, it starts at the CC Adi Leela chapter 7. And I was looking for the year. It's all in here. You can check it out. There's a whole series of first-class purports by Prabhupada. And he's quoting the Puranas and what is it? Anyway, Sarira Bhasha? What is the name of? Yeah. The commentary of Madhavacharya. I mean, of Sankaracharya. So now we're going to finish up. We'll just take a few minutes. And we're going to finish up about Madhavacharya. And this all comes from the Madhya Lila, chapter 9, 245. But before we do that, I wanted to just pass out, so you get a picture, and just pass these on. This is Madhavacharya, this first picture, and he's worshipping his, and the story's in here about his deity, Udupi Krishna. But does anyone know, he's pictured, and you can see his murti there in Sri Rangam? Oh, Udupi, I'm sorry, Udupi. But he also is, anyway, it's another story. But he's situated, how is he situated? So I've got him mixed up with Ramanujacharya. With the V, or is he all, because this is a picture I downloaded of Madhavacharya sitting like this. Okay, so we're right. Does anyone know why he's sitting like this? With two fingers? Is he a precursor to Winston Churchill? Is he an early day hippie given the peace sign? What does that mean? No, you're right. Achinta Beta Beta Tattva. Well, he doesn't quite get that far. He's teaching Dvaitas, because it's, like I said, the arc of history. If you bend it to a thing too fast, it'll snap. They're all following atheistic Buddhism. Shiva comes in the form of Sankaracharya and gets them to accept the Vedic literatures. And you got to follow the Vedas. And it's not just you just become nothing. Spiritual suicide, pop like a bubble, but you become one with the Brahman, that there's matter and spirit. So he's sitting there like this, matter and spirit, that there's two. No, I'm sorry about that. Like I say, these guys ding me. So Sankaracharya gets bending. First you go from Buddhist atheism, forget the Vedas, like that. Then you go to Sankaracharya, who's Shiva, that wait a minute, you got to follow the Vedas, and there's matter and there's spirit. Matter and spirit. Okay. But then you got Madhavacharya, who says, wait a minute, even in liberation, that spirit, that Brahman, there's Jivatma, and there's the Supreme Atma. Nitya Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitanam. We're all eternal. But Eko Bahunam Yovadadati Kaman. There's one chief eternal who maintains the others. And even after liberation, why does it matter that there's two? Why does it matter after liberation there's two? I mean, it's ontological, so we know our place in the universe. Okay, fine. But when we leave this body, why does it matter? Dravida. Yeah. I remember you were raised as a Vaishnava. You two were raised as Vaishnavas at Ramapati as well. But I remember going to Christian church, and the idea of the picture they presented of heaven, I had absolutely no interest in. I don't even like harp music. What do I mean, harp and wings and, God is a giant like Lincoln Memorial, and don't tick him off because he's going to throw one of those thunderbolts or send you to hell. I mean, jeez, man. You stay up at night having bad dreams that you meet God. And it's no fun. I mean, floating on a cloud playing a harp would really, at least for me, that would wear on me. But, Vrindavan, Vaikunta, Lord Ram, Nishringa. What is it that is it the Nadia Prakash that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's newspaper? It was a daily newspaper, wasn't it? Daily newspaper. Somebody, all spiritual topics. And somebody said, we'll in, don't worry. Because we know Malati Devi cooks some nice breakfast, so I know what I'm up against. Somebody asked, what will you write about? How will you do a daily newspaper? What will you talk about? And what did Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's answer? We could produce a newspaper every moment. So with Krishna's activities, there's unlimited, sweet. There's all the different 5 primary rasas. How do you want to relate to it? Not only do you have a relationship, and it's not just awe and reverence, trembling, and a sense of creatureliness like the Christian idea. You can become a servant, you can become a friend. We know how it works. There's paternal love, there's conjugal love. In conjugal love, there's paraki and aparaki. There's all different combinations. It's unbelievable. Okay, so here's Madhavacharya with his fingers like that, making the point that even in liberation, we're living entities. Now, we're going to read this story. I don't know if we have time. Let's see. This is Madhavacharya. And in one picture, because Madhavacharya, he has a history. Who was he before he was Madhavacharya in a previous manifestation? Yeah, he was Vayu. But before he was Vayu, who was he? He was Bhima. Yeah, Ram confirms. And before he was Bhima and Vayu, who was he? Hanuman. So you can imagine this. So this first picture is him there, Madhavacharya, and behind him are Hanuman and Bhima. And then he also, because he gave commentary on Bhagavad Gita, so many different literatures, and he was personally instructed by Vyasadeva in the Himalayas. So here is Madhavacharya meeting Vyasadeva. And here is how he got his deity. And maybe I'll just tell that story quickly. Because he was coming from Hanuman and Bhima and Vayu, his strength was unlimited. And you can see in the pictures here, his strong body. He could put his toe down, he would challenge. He would put his toe just touching the ground and challenge anyone to move his foot. He couldn't even lift his foot off the ground. Prabhupada said as a child, if his mother called, he would appear immediately in one leap. Wherever he was, he would appear within one leap. And sometimes on pilgrimage, he would just, for fun, in those days, India was full of tigers, he would just wrestle with a tiger, just for fun. So quite an amazing personality. Imagine the tiger probably, was harassing the devotees and he would subdue it, on parikram, walking on padayatra wherever they were going. So one day he was on a beach and there was a boat and it was caught in the tides, or I forget exactly, stuck on a sandbar, I forget exactly what it was. But somehow the boat was in distress, yeah? The boat was in distress. And he's on the beach, chanting japa or there with his disciples. And somehow or other, by signs and directions, he saved the boat. So the boat owner, he didn't have anything on the boat of significance, but as ballast, they would often carry tilak. It's way afield, but this is history. When they used to go from India, anyway, it's a long story, but they would unload your cargo, and then you have to keep the boat, stable in the water. They would load it sometimes with broken china, sometimes they would fill it. So this particular boat, or salt, whatever, was available at that other place. This way they stayed, the cargo ship could continue. Or you would stay a keel, on keel. So this boat was full of tilak. So the pious captain, out of gratitude, said, all I can give you, but here's a lifetime supply of tilak. Gave him this giant block of tilak. And as soon as Madhavacharya touched the tilak, it cracked in half, and his beautiful Udupi Krishna, they call him Udupi Krishna, because that was his headquarters, was in Udupi, this beautiful Krishna deity. It's Krishna as a child, isn't it? Yeah, Krishna as a child, which was unusual, because usually he's a four-handed Narayan. So here is a picture of him, and no one could move him. No, once again, no one could move the deity. But Madhavacharya picked it up and took him to his headquarters, which is Udupi. And Udupi is on the western side in Karnataka, Or is it just above Karnataka? What's above? Tamil Nadu? No, what is it? Kerala. I mean, it's up north from Kerala. Yeah, so it's on the western side, Bay of Bengal. Yeah, okay. And here's a picture of, and Prabhupada says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada, to maintain his family and to support the Vaishnavas, all through Prabhupada's household life, he was supporting the Gaudiya Math and supporting the devotees in yatras and things like that. So he traveled, all of his travels all over India. So Prabhupada notes that at Udupi, they have a very nice, the pujaris are all coming from Ramanuja line. It's very clean, very neat, nicely maintained, and good quality guest house. So Prabhupada tells the railway line to get there. I'm making plans if my health somehow or other recovers. So here's Udupi, and there always has to be a kund in the northeast corner, I believe. Is it what, northeast corner? Anyway, according to Vasi. Every day. And here are two pictures of that beautiful Udupi Krishna. You might as well take them both. So take a look and pass them on. And I'm wondering, because of the time, I think what we'll do is we'll save, so we don't have to rush through this. We will, next Sunday, because I also want to tell that Jayananda pastimes, because we had Jayananda's appearance day. And I have that short biography by Kalakanta. And then I also have assembled some other very sweet pastimes. So next Sunday, we will finish up on Madhavacharya, and we will talk about a modern saint certified by Srila Prabhupada, Jayananda Prabhu. So we can end there. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.